Hello everyone, Aidan here. I hope that you're all keeping safe and well. Today I'd like to talk to you about how to develop your company's international trade opportunities. Today, even the smallest of companies have the ability to develop and grow sales internationally. Barriers to international trade are now lower than they've ever been. The likes of the internet, we've improved communications, and even low transport costs are making it easier now for firms to look at the opportunities of developing and growing their sales internationally. But a lot of firms are faced with the challenge of how do we start? What do we need to do to try and target a potential new market for our business? So the purpose of this video is to give you a quick overview on how to develop your company's international selling opportunities. Before firms begin selling, they must accomplish two tasks. Number one is to identify which is the most suitable market. Number two is deciding on what is the entry strategy to get into that market. So when trying to select a suitable market, you have to look at it in two different areas. One, how is this market attractive? And two, what will be the reaction of the competition that already exists within that market? So when deciding how attractive a market is for your company, you should look at four different areas. The first area is political risk. You need to see if that political environment in the country you're going to go to, if it's stable, but also is that government supportive of foreign firms entering that market? The second thing you need to do is look at the economic comparators of that target country. So you might look at the middle class to see what type of consumption they have. But you also might need to look at things like the disposable income. So for example, if you're somebody going to go in to sell a high-end product, you want to be targeting a middle class that's got a high disposable income, that's willing to spend money on foreign high-end products. So the third thing you need to do is work out what is the makeup of the society within a target economy. So for example, what's the demographics? How much of a young population versus an old population do they have? Does that population suit the type of product you're trying to sell into that country? And the fourth is how safe it is to do business in that country. So would your staff be safe? Is there a high chance of corruption? You need to look at these areas to try and make sure there's some protection to your company. So a tip I always give is when you're looking into a new market, is there any cultural linkages or historical linkages between your country and the countries that you're looking at trying to develop sales? So for example, is if you're a Spanish company, South America may be more attractive to you compared to Asia, because South America has a common linkage with your country in terms of history and of language, where Asia may not. So the second part in trying to work out which market to select is trying to understand what will the reaction be of the existing competitors that are already in that market. So when you go in to that market, you may have to see if that competitor or those competitors may have alliances with other retailers, with local government, or any other area that could perhaps influence or reduce the impact, or even make it really hard for your company to develop and grow sales in that market due to their power. So it's very important that you try and work out and analyze how much power and strength those competitors who are in that market have. So now that we've identified a potential or suitable market for us to enter, we now need to decide the correct strategy to enter that market. When trying to decide what is a suitable entry strategy for a market, you need to look at about 5 different factors. One is what resources are required to enter that market. The second one would be like transport costs. Third one would be trade barriers. Fourth one would be how quick it would be for you to start getting sales within that market. And perhaps the fifth one, and most importantly one, is how can you control the risk? With those factors in mind, there are 4 potential strategies that you can look at to try and enter into a new market. So the first strategy that you could consider is exporting directly from your country to that target. The advantages of this is it's low cost, it's low risk, and it'll easily get you into those countries. However, the disadvantage is you're going to pay higher costs in terms of transport, and perhaps suppliers or competitors on the ground may be able to replicate that and produce a similar product at a cheaper price than yours. The second strategy is either licensing or franchising. So the advantages of this is that resource commitment and political risk is quite low, because you're putting that on to the licensee or the franchisee who may take up that role. However, the disadvantage to this is its potential loss over the control of technologies, the products, or even the service quality. The third strategy you could consider is joint venture. The advantages to this is it allows you to quickly get set up in a new country and have local expertise who would have lots of local contacts and networks already established to quickly get your products within the market and get everything going. However, over time, when you do joint ventures, there may be a chance of friction because of lost control, and both sides, the local person or the local company on the ground and your organization, may have different strategies, which may cause friction in terms of which strategy to use and implement for that market. And the fourth and final strategy is to try and establish a wholly owned subsidiary within that market. The advantage of this is that the company retains full control over its assets, its resources, and its branding. However, the disadvantage to this is that it can be very, very expensive and can take a lot of time to develop and grow. I've written a really detailed blog with lots and lots of information. If you want to have a look at it, as I mentioned earlier, it's down in the comments below. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, and thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video.